Okay, YouTubers, space detectives and pareidolia police. The pareidolia police are going to love this one. They're going to come down on me like a ton of bricks, even though it wasn't my find originally. Let me show you the image here. This is an image taken way back years ago, and it's from Sol 958. We have this rather interesting ridgeline with some big kind of rocks and pebbles and stuff, the usual kind of thing you'd see in Gale Crater. This was taken back in 2015, Sol 958, there's the number there and the date. Okay, so it's perfectly legitimate. Some people argue these aren't taken on Mars, but they are, because you can often see Phobos and stuff up in the sky, some of the night shots they take, and also the sun is way smaller because obviously the planet is further away from the sun than we are. So at the closest point, Mars is about 36 million miles away from Earth at its nearest point. But it's quite a long way further from the sun. So you can actually work out that this is taken on Mars and not on Earth. So that argument is defunct as far as I'm concerned, but people still spout it as if it's fact, because of course a lot of them are flatties and don't want to believe that Mars even exists. But I digress. The image we're looking at here is pretty interesting. It's quite good quality. We got some pretty in focus kind of detail here for a change. They aren't usually. The background's out of focus. There's an interesting mound up there in the background, but just below that mound there, you can just see that, we have this little thing sticking up. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to give credit to the person who found this just earlier today, only a few hours ago. I was looking on one of my friends' groups called Martian Genesis on Facebook, and Dean Sattler put up this image here, and there's another clip of it here, of this little tiny thing, or what looks to be a little person. Okay, let me show you the page. We've got Martian Genesis here. If you're not a member of Martian Genesis, go along and join up. It's kind of the sister site to my Facebook group, which is ArtAlienTV Mars Magazine. A lot of the same people come on here and go on my page as well as many other Mars sort of groups and stuff. There's the original post 3 hours ago today, which is the 14th of May 2019. There it is. Really cool. Okay, let's have another look at that. So that's a raw clip. It looks raw to me. Nothing's been done to it. I'll show you the clips I've got up here as well in a sec. Let me show you the raw image. Here's the raw image. I've also done a Gigapan of the area to show you the general overview of the actual ridgeline here, and we'll try and work out what sort of scale we're looking at. It's pretty hard to tell with a lot of these things, but I would say this thing's only a couple of inches tall, maybe 2 or 3 at the most. It's hard to say. But here's the raw image. Let's zoom in and have a look. The raw image is actually quite good. It's not brilliant, and when you zoom in real close, it will pixelate, but it's not bad. And here we have it. Okay, here's the anomaly, although anomalies do seem to be the norm on Mars. So why we still call them anomalies, I don't really know. A few people have pointed that out actually recently and said, well, anomalies seem to be everywhere, so if they're everywhere, they're not anomalies, which is a very good point indeed. So there we have it. It looks like a little person leaning on a square block. You can see an eye there, you can see a nose. Now, to see more detail in these images, what you really need to do is to take a clip like this. I'll show you how I do it. I usually take a clip about that sort of size. Okay, now not too close. You need a bit of space around the thing, whatever it may be. And then what I do, I go to size, and I change the resolution. It's 200 pixels per inch at the moment. I put a 0 in there. Then I go to 1920 out there to give me the width, and that will enlarge it considerably. And what that does, it depixelates it by stuffing it with pixels, and then a tiny bit of blur usually to try and get rid of any distortion. What that does, it gets rid of some of these distortion lines that you get around the edges of things, okay, which are JPEG sort of artifacts or JPEG distortion. You get it in all JPEGs really, depending on the compression rate. These images have been compressed by about 25%. So you're going to get these kind of blocky, kind of mucky lines around the edges. But anyway, let's crack on with it. So there we have it. And when you zoom in, you can see what looks like an eye. Let's select that in a minute. You can see an eye there where my cursor is, a little nose, a mouth here, a chin, what looks like a shoulder, and possibly an arm coming around here, holding something, or it looks to be like of course it may not be. This may just be a pebble or a couple of pebbles that have stuck together, or maybe a bit of coral or some kind of thing that was underwater. A lot of this area was underwater a long time ago, so who knows what it is, but it could have been underwater, this thing. But we got a very square kind of little block-shaped object here, which is quite bright, and this sort of person-looking thing seems to be leaning on this kind of block and looking over to the right here. Okay, so there's that. Okay, let's minimize that. Let me show you the Gigapan. Now the Gigapan, I did this quite a while ago. Can't remember when I did it, probably about a year or so ago, and didn't really find a lot in here. There is this weird thing down here that other people have pointed out. I think Martine and one or two other people from Martian Genesis pointed this out before. It looks like a hinge just here, joined to this kind of part of a door or hinge or something, some kind of hinge mechanism. There's lots of weird stuff in here, but it's all very concreted and covered in sort of hardened and solidified sediment. So a lot of these things are difficult to work out. Here is a real nice close-up, and I've got the person who spotted it here, Dean Sattler, 14th of May 2019, spotted by him. Great find. This is really cool. I saw this and thought, wow, that's really interesting, because it's similar to some of the things that I've found and published before, as well as many other people. I've published many similar things on my main channel, ArtAlienTV, and lots of other people have found similar things, but they're usually not very clear and you can't see them very well, whereas this one, because it's on the top of a ridge line, you've actually got quite good definition, because there's a sort of plain background behind it. If you had a complex background behind this with lots of weird shapes and rocks and things, then it would be much harder to see the outline and silhouette of this shape. Okay, so there we have it. Even in the raw image, it's quite clear. You can see this square block here, which is quite bright. You can see that what seems to be a head with a nose and an eye and a mouth, and a little kind of thing on top of the head there, sticking up. Don't know what that means. Like a little kind of hat or something. I mean, is it really possible that there could have been Martians, or there are Martians still alive even, that are only a few inches tall? It is possible. I'm not saying this is an actual Martian. It looks like one, doesn't mean it is one, but it does look like one. And this could be possibly another type of creature. It may not be a person. It may be some other type of creature that just looks a bit like a person. We really don't know what's up there. And I never rule anything out, because if you start ruling things out too early on, and then someone finds amazing pictures of something, then you're proved wrong straight away. So it's very good to keep an open mind about these things, because basically we really don't know the full details of what went on Mars and what lived on Mars. Although I have shown what seem to be many hundreds of skulls and statues and remains of quite small people and stuff like that. Often found by other researchers that I then publish and then give them credit. I always credit the person that finds these things. Not only polite, but the correct and proper thing to do legally as well. So maybe some other channels out there might learn from that and do the same. Some channels do, some channels don't. I always do. Lots of researchers out there and people on certain websites will actually just hijack people's finds and never credit the right person or even mention them. Which I think is not only legally very dubious, but highly rude and unethical, I think. So there we are. What is it? You've got a very clear square box type thing here, which is quite reflective, got a high luminosity. When you brighten up the picture, like I've done here, That comes up really bright, so that may be metallic. You've got what looks like a shoulder and an arm coming round here, perhaps. There's some little details on this. The eye is pretty clear. I mean, even in the raw image, you can see an eye, a nose and a mouth. Is that a coincidence? Yes, it could well be. I'm not saying this is a person, or a little man or woman, but it certainly looks like one. And often, if it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, it may actually be a duck. There are many people on YouTube who insist, well, you know, if you put up, say, a picture of a banana, they would insist it was an orange or something, or an apple, you know. So there's always going to be people that oppose what you say, and just because they state things and make assertions does not mean they are correct. I don't claim to be 100% correct about any of the stuff I do. I often get things wrong, but I will post a retraction if I find that I've made a mistake in a video, as I have done before. So I don't claim to get these things right all the time, but often all I'm doing is showing you the pictures that other researchers have found, as we are today, which is perfectly legitimate in my opinion, and well within the bounds of reasonable exploration and digital archaeological sort of techniques here, showing interesting details on the ground, often what look like animal or sort of creature remains, and also hundreds of buildings and loads of wreckage and wrecked vehicles and that kind of thing. Not all of these things are little people, but this was interesting. Okay, let me show you just that clip on its own. It's going to load up. There we are. This is a slightly further back, and actually it looks slightly sharper from this distance, because if you get in too close, it kind of breaks up a bit. Okay, let's go a little bit closer. There we are. Pretty good detail, mainly because it's a well lit picture, and like I said, there's not very much behind it, so we got good detail and kind of shape here to be seen, so you can see that pretty clearly. Okay, there we are. Is it a little person? Is it just some pebbles that are stuck together? Why is it kind of next to this perfectly square? Look at the right angles in there. The right angles in there are absolutely spot on. Look at that. One there and one there. So there's symmetry in here, which there shouldn't be if it was just random rock. So even if this isn't a little person or whatever it might be, or a little creature, it could be a tiny kind of marmoset type creature. I have found many sort of skull remains of what look like small monkeys and things, and perhaps even marsupials on the surface, not far from here, and lots of them, and they're quite small. Some of them are tiny. Some of the little skulls we found, me and other researchers, are really like only like an inch or something. So that's about this sort of size. So this may not be a person. This may actually be some little tiny monkey or other type of creature similar to that, some little primate, you know. So there we are. Very interesting. Let's have another look at the raw image. Let's take a look at the raw clip of that again. Let's look at that one. I think that's about the right level of zoom there. So you can see a bit more of the ridgeline here. And actually, let's zoom in a little bit. You can see the detail there, okay? There's another clip here. It's a bit closer. Now this was taken from the lower res BR2 image, so we're not seeing as much detail there. There's less distortion, but there's also a bit less detail because there's less pixels to work with, so that's less clear, but you can still see it there. And let's go back to the Gigapan here and have another look. We've got this big rock in front here, which is kind of split. Loads of interesting stuff here, but of course most of it is just kind of solidified clays and mud rock that's hardened in the sun and baked hard. And as I've said before, the soil in Gale Crater is very sticky because it's got a high level of sulfur in it. So many of these things could be interesting objects that just have hardened clays kind of stuck to them, which is solidified and gone hard, and bits have broken off and stuff like that. So there's loads of stuff to look at here. And some of these things may actually be bits of coral, and there's an interesting thing sticking up here, look, just there. Weird. Some of these things may be metallic objects, a bit like that other thing I showed you, which looks to be something a bit like a hinge, which I think either Martine or one of her friends on Martian Genesis published a couple of, or a few months ago, I think, this thing here. So I'll show you a clip of that very quickly. Here it is. Let's show what looks like the hinge. Okay, there we are. It seems to be like a hinge just there, and it's joined. This could be made of metal. It only looks this colour because all these images have an orange filter on it, which makes everything look the same sort of brownish colour. So don't go by colour, go by shape and detail. The colours can be very misleading on Mars. Their excuse for using the orange filter is that it helps you see into the shadows, the darker shadows like we have here, which is true, it does. But it also obfuscates the actual real colours, and it blocks the greens out. So if there's anything growing on stuff, we don't see any green, which is very convenient, I think. And there is moss growing on some of these rocks in some of these areas, as I have shown before, and other people have. So that's a fact. It's something that NASA won't talk about. They're trying to keep that a secret for some reason, because I suppose if they admit there's plants on Mars, then that is basically admitting there's life on Mars, and there's probably a whole food chain related to those plants. Okay, so there's the hinge thing. Let me just show you the enhancement of that. I just brighten it up and put a colour filter on it. This is probably more like the real colour. Okay, there we are. I mean, if you zoom in, you can see this bit sticking on there, onto there. It looks like it's kind of attached to it, like a hinge. May not be, of course, but it looks like one. And I have published many similar things which look like they have hinges and bolts attached to them and things like that on my channel. So there are lots more examples of these things. These things should not be looked at in isolation, because there are many, many hundreds of other similar finds, not just on my channel but on others, that go with this, and these things should be viewed as a whole and as a series of finds rather than individual finds. It looks like a little person. It may be a little monkey when you zoom in. There we are. Could it be a little person? Could it be a little monkey or creature or some kind of small miniature primate? This is probably only a few inches. It may be a bit more, but really, it's hard to say exactly, but it's not very big. As many of these things we found on Mars seem to be, they are really small, okay? So there we are. So 958, going right back to years ago, not that long after the rover landed in the Gale crater, okay? So there we have it, a nice clear image. Very interesting. If you zoom in, you can see an eye there, and a nose, and a mouth there. The chin coming round, shoulder perhaps there. There's some interesting details in there, and a very square block, which is highly reflective for some reason. So there's definitely something there, even if you don't think it's a creature. The square block in itself, I would say, is evidence of something, at least. Quickly, if you haven't already, do come along to ArtAlienTV Mars magazine and join up. We've just reached 2,000 members, which is great. I think this morning it reached 2,000 members. And come along and get the free app if you haven't got it already. Check out some of these stories. I always put up stories here which are the latest stuff from the press about various space missions and things that are going to be coming up soon as well. I'd like to keep everyone informed. Neil Spencer's done this animation of clouds on Mars. I also did a video about this, which I'll show you a bit of now. This is really cool. Now, these images came up last night as well, late last night, and I saw them and thought, wow, this is unusual. The rover's actually taken some photographs, a whole set of photographs of clouds passing over Gale crater at dusk, by the looks of it. And I put a blue filter on that. It gets a bit closer in a minute. There's also a shooting star in one of these images as well, which is really cool. I think it's in image 4. So if we count, I'll pause it when that comes up. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. There it is, just there on my cursor. So it appears in the bottom left of the image. But look at these clouds. How cool is that? They look like they're a long way up. They don't look like rain clouds. And there's the shooting star. That's in image 4 of 8 in the sequence. Travelling upwards by the looks of it, or seemingly upwards. Cool. There is actually another one in this sequence, but it's very small, and I didn't bother putting it in the video because it was too small really, it was a fraction of this size. So there's a couple of shooting stars seen from the surface of Mars. So there we are, check that video out, that's really nice stuff there. As soon as I saw those images, I thought, wow, I'm going to make a quick animation of those straight away. Mars rover films moving clouds and shooting star. Do come along to, like I said, do come along to Mars Magazine. And also, if you haven't come already, please come and join up or subscribe to my new channel, Space Detective 1. This is just a backup channel, but I was having some trouble with my main channel about a month ago, which I probably told a lot of you about already. I got hacked and there was loads of weird stuff going on my channel, so I immediately set up this backup channel just to make sure that my material is safe. So I will be uploading loads of stuff to this. This has got, at the moment, it's got mainly some of my older videos on here, but there's also some newer ones as well, like the little person found on Mars, this one here. But these are generally smaller videos. These are 720p, not full HD. But there's about 50 on here so far. Some of these things you may have seen before, but if you're new to my channel, you may not have seen a lot of this stuff because I published a lot of this stuff years ago, and some of these finds are really quite astonishing and cool. Okay, so do come along to SD1 or Space Detective 1. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope the weather is good where you are. It certainly is here today in sunny Bristol in the UK. Thanks for watching. Clips coming up now.